Welcome to the first exhibition piece of the Global Paradigm Expansion Project, Ocmaya, where it's the goal of achieving resolution of the world's problems by expanding our paradigm. In this exhibition, it talks about looking beyond the bottom line and how important it is that we go back to looking at economic efficiency. We have three main goals, which first it should show how an expansion of the paradigm can improve social outcomes. Second, it shows clearly the opportunities that you have through this paradigm expansion without providing any solutions so that your individual creativity can come into play. And third, it looks at how the expansion creates advantages for social value. So enjoy. Let's then begin with the first part, which shows one main difference between physics and economics. This is just to show that it is not so much the same in economics as it is in physics, what the assumptions of how the world actually looks like. It's not really the same in terms of stability. There are other differences, but this will focus on this one main difference. And as you can see here from this very easy visual, in arithmetic in 1750, when the basis of contemporary or modern economics were being made and developed, at that time the arithmetic was already very well established in a decimal system, numeric. It was being spread or would be spread around the world as a standard. And really today, if you have 10 units of anything and you add 5 units, then you would have 15 units. And you could use that even in prehistoric cases, and you could continue using that in the next hundreds of years. In physics, it's the same in terms of things like calculating gravity for very simple objects in our day-to-day lives. We have a formula that was already existing in the 1750 and that still can be used today, and not much, if anything, has actually changed. This does not encompass the entire idea of gravity, obviously. It, however, is remained the same, and its usefulness is the same. However, I want to make the point very clear that the assumptions that were developed in 1750 or roundabout, they had one very, very simple formula, is that economic efficiency would be more or less equal to financial efficiency. And thus, if you only focused on finance and the financial efficiency of individuals and organizations, then there would be automatically an economic efficiency. You don't have to understand the differences. This is the point of this, or one of the main points of this exhibition. However, if we truly look at the basis of economics at that time, we can actually say that this is not so much the case. And it's clear, and it is vastly clear, that economic efficiency in our world is not at all equal to financial efficiency. So what does this mean, and what are the differences, is the next point. So let's go on to the next point, where it's shown that the world has changed, and even though physics remains the same, arithmetic remains the same, economics is not, and there is now a huge gap between economic efficiency and financial efficiency. So here we see a visual which essentially shows how a market would work in 1750s, which is at a time that, well, you had this specializations already. So you had things like a tailor, a butcher, a barber. And the common idea here of this market is that it's not globalized. It doesn't have a gigantic industrialization in terms of global parts, and it essentially focuses on a lot of individuals which would essentially use their own talents for whatever they're best at. Without going too much into this economic ideas of supply and demand, it at its core, the the production and the consumption was relatively regional. Obviously, there was a lot of spices and other kinds of trade around the world, which were not very much socially enhanced, and obviously had a lot of crimes. But focusing, and Ocmaya will follow social ideals also that will show how to improve those issues. This is more or less the focus on the economic side. So we essentially see a butcher that would represent a number of butchers that would essentially provide meat for the entire small, let's say, region, right? And what we have on the other side here is now our globalized view. So the whole world has an interconnectedness now that is much, much deeper and has much bigger supply chains, not only trading goods between countries, but actually manufacturing in different countries to provide one good. And we have huge logistics chains, flights by air, sea, and land, logistics to the demand, and it's a way more complex in terms of the actual products that you produce. So you may have a lot of natural resources from one country that are taken to another country to manufacture, and then this manufacturer sells in another country. And it doesn't even have to be a gigantically diverse or a gigantically complex product. Even things like jeans or the manufacturing of jeans need to travel thousands and thousands of kilometers. So having said that, it's relatively easy to understand the difference and to see that economic efficiency and financial efficiency today are not the same. So what does this mean? Well, the idea originated in about the mid of 18th century, where through self-regulation, there would be the inclusion of these important issues in economics, right, that would make them relatively unessential to be looked at. So what are these? Yeah, and how do they impact each other? This is the next point. So let's start with quality standards. So what about quality? Now, the idea of quality is relatively modern. So obviously this word as it stands is not the same as you would think about it before. But it doesn't mean that it didn't exist in terms of the content. And one very key issue is that one of the major examples that you would get in a typical economics textbook around the world is that a butcher can self-regulate because it's not in this person's interest to poison their demand. So they would need to keep some kind of freshness in the meat and taste and whatnot, so that they could actually continue to produce. So it doesn't encompass all of the quality needs that we have in our more complex world, because now one of the things that we can see is that the butcher doesn't directly sell to the consumer, right? So it is possible that you can have some kind of incentives to cheat through this anonymity, and provided that you will be able to um, control, obviously, that you don't poison all your demand, but certainly there have been a lot of health issues and recurring cases around the world of poor food and drink quality, where people have died through E. coli, for example, even in the United States. And other examples include things like blindness through bad beverages. So we cannot consider this to be the same in terms of the situation that was lived in the 18th century as you would have it today. Furthermore, one thing that is not very well understood is that a lot of people think that the higher the production, then the higher the efficiency, but that's not always true. Actually, the idea of the 18th century was to come into some kind of equilibrium. This is not something that we can really observe in terms of the efficiency of the entire system when we look at globalization, because, well, while many industries exhibit many different characteristics, there are indications, for example, in the fashion industry, that there is an overproduction, that there's simply too much clothes being produced. And this is also something that's very easy to show, but it will be part of another exhibition. So even though, yes, that there is a lot of production, it doesn't mean that it's economic efficient. Furthermore, material efficiency, well, if you're a tailor, obviously you want to use as much textile as possible because you want to reduce your waste. And by that, then obviously you wouldn't need to look at waste management so much. This is not exactly the case today because, well, I mean, packaging is a huge issue, and there is a lot of inefficiency in that is obvious by anyone who has, for example, used delivery systems or services where packages are widely inefficient. Again, another point of another exhibition. And well, they didn't have electricity in the 18th century, at least. Um, well, not at this time, and thus you could say that there was some kind of energy inclusion in the ways that they use comparative advantage and so on, but there is no explicit usage of fossil fuels in grand mass industrially as you have today. And today, well, as you have a huge expansion of supply chains, as you need a huge amount of energy, energy is a huge topic right now. There is an added dimension that we need to understand to reach economic efficiency. Furthermore, again, water is not really seen as a factor of production, even though it's obvious that humans obviously need water, but it's just seen as so abundant that you wouldn't actually need to consider it as much as other factors. But today and mostly in the future, this is slowly changing as there is not enough water, there are limits to water, then this is going to get worse, and obviously there will be some kind of inefficiency. Here, in terms of the, or actually the other way around, there will be some kind of limit due to the extremely inefficient usage of water in production. And the financial efficiency remained mostly the same. Obviously, there are changes into what are the products or the services that actually create value. Again, not to go too deep into the economic side, but mostly the focus of financial efficiency has remained the same, which essentially comes to the point of saying, well, um, at the 18th century, you can essentially focus on this, right? And the rest will follow, right? So the rest is going to be almost by default efficient. By just looking at most of our industries, and by having this expansion and being completely aware that at least these three were issues that were expected to also have or lead to efficiency, and that they are not leading to efficiency today. And through the expansion of adding, for example, energy, it's really possible to see one of the main issues of this exhibition. The world is widely inefficient, and uh, can provide in the next point the so what. So what when we're inefficient? Well, I can provide in the next points even clear examples of how this comes to be and how this can be used by organizations and by individuals to make much better choices that can help solve or resolve the problems of our modernity. So now let's go to the so what, right? And actually, there is a lot that can be unraveled here. This shows that there can be a lot of different exhibitions in terms of materials, in terms of energy efficiency, water efficiency, and so on. But there are three things that I want to focus on. The first one is metrics. So it's really important to understand that the financial focus, now that there is a clear idea, there's difference between the actual efficiency of usage of resources, and there is a difference to the financial efficiency. So, and we can understand where this focus comes from, then it's easy to show that organizations worldwide, they just need to report their financials. So they are not obligated under law to report, for example, the energy efficiency, at least not as I will present it today. There have been some changes where they actually need to do so, or some industries need to do so. But again, it's something that that's relatively new, and that it doesn't really measure efficiency as it should, because it just is more based on very simple norms that do not have the complexity that you have in financial reporting. And what we observe, however, is a lot of organizations, even though they don't have to, right? They want to show how much sustainability they have. They want to show the reduction in CO2. They want to show reduction in the use of materials. They want to show some kind of social sustainability, which again is not the focus here, but will be included in one of the many exhibitions of Ocmaya. And however, there are three main issues here. They're not standardized, so they don't have really a quality to say, well, this is actually telling us something. They don't sometimes don't have the veracity. So this is the so-called greenwashing, where you may just report whatever because it's not necessarily illegal, right? To change the numbers here, as it would be illegal here in financial reports. Then there's a lot of opportunities to change the actual reality of the world, and there is really a little comparability. So because there are not a lot of standardized issues. And here comes the first opportunity for not only organizations, but maybe NGOs that could come together and create these metrics. What would be the efficient metrics for all of these? And this could be a multi disciplinary task when a lot of NGOs come together and say, well, this would be the global metrics, and there would be some kind of pendant, right, so to the pure financial reports. That would have a lot of value for both organizations and society, right? And I hope that you can see I'm not proposing any solutions, right? I'm just showing through the expansion of the paradigm how a lot of organizations could actually create many more solutions, which is much, much better than just one person trying to solve the world. The second point is that you can have new models and methodologies. So here I would like to show that, well, organizations are essentially responsible for their own reports, and what seems to be very, very logical, especially in the 18th century, in our globalized world, is not as logical, because this self-organization does not really work for the dimensions of economic efficiency in terms of energy efficiency. It doesn't really work in terms of material efficiency. And I want to show you how that is. And this may take a bit more time, but I really would even make a promise that this will change the way you view the world, and how the individual efficiency does not lead to collective efficiency, which again is another point for another exhibition. To actually understand this, I have borrowed from Six Sigma. So if you're interested in Six Sigma, it's a tool of quality, or also can be seen as a framework and an approach, as a methodology. So it's a multifaceted view of quality to measure, which comes up with measurements, right? Or measurements actually is one of the key issues in Six Sigma. And I'm not going to go through all of these points specifically, but I just want to show you that there are a certain path for anyone that has used a commercial airplane, where you have a carry-on luggage and you have luggage that would be stored in the plane. We're talking about the luggage that's stored in the plane in contemporary methods, and a path towards actually getting your luggage back when you travel. So we have different steps, from printing the correct tag to making sure that there are no hazardous materials or any type of things that could essentially explode. It's quite important actually for air travel, not only for air travel, but especially for air travel. And you have all these kinds of logistics tasks that if one of them is wrong, it will not actually lead to the deliverance of, or the delivery of your luggage. And the main point is that you could say, well, each of these points are extremely efficient, right? For every 100 luggage that you have, only 5 have some kind of mistake or are defective, like the print for your bag didn't show the actual airport that you wanted to go, but it was another airport. Then all of these are going to be incorrect, and for every 100 pieces of luggage, 5 would get lost, right? If you say 95% of this is efficient, is correct, right? And then for each one, if it's 95% of these steps, then we can ask the question, if a corporation is managing 5 million pieces of luggage, which is not a very unusual number for international uh, corporations, international airlines, and you have a supposedly excellent efficiency of 95% on each step, then how many pieces of luggage would actually make it on time in one piece, right, with the right quality, and obviously delivered to the right person to the destination? And well, I mean, I don't want to make a huge pause. If you want, you can pause the video. But it's not necessarily what typically people expect. So the way to solve this is you multiply for every step the efficiency. So you have essentially 0.95, which is 95% in a decimal, and you multiply that 10 times. So 0.95 to the power of 10, and this gives you the total efficiency of 59.88%. So essentially 60% of your luggage will come on time, which are 2,993,685 pieces of luggage. Right? They meet the quality standards, and this would be highly, deeply inefficient, economic also inefficiency. Why? Because just imagine, out of the 5 million pieces of luggage, you would either need to find, redirect, and or compensate for the loss of damages or damages of more than 2 million pieces of luggage. Then this would essentially result in bankruptcy, mostly, but not only, because of bad experiences, and people would actually stop traveling with you. So no company, right, that doesn't actually sustain some kind of quality should be able to keep in operating. Right? They should go out of business, and then others should replace them, the ones that are more efficient. However, this is very curious because efficiency of energy follows the same process. So if you have a production process or you have a supply chain, you will have a loss of energy, right? This is just basic physics. Energy is not created nor destroyed in our world, and thus the energy that you put into these processes, the industrial processes, like cars moving some kind of package or from A to B, or ships or planes, or machines that are moving, any of these have some kind of energetic efficiency, which is divided into the energy that you're using and the energy that is lost as waste. Right? And we can determine very relatively easily, right, what is the actual energy for each step. And an 80% energy is already seen as highly efficient. Right? But if we have here this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps, which essentially shows a very, very short supply chain in comparison to the normal supply chain that you would have in the world. And you would see that there is substantial loss of efficiency between the steps, then hopefully by now you can see that it doesn't make sense that everyone makes an individual report without having some kind of aggregate that we could have the total industrial efficiency. This can be great for financial reports, but it's not very good for energy, for example, in specific, right? Because if we said 80% is something that's quite okay, then what if we would have something relatively deficient, like 70%, for only these 9 very short steps? Then we just need to multiply 0.7 to the power of 9, and we would have only an efficiency of 4%. So, and this is for a very, very, very short supply chain. If this is a supply chain where you have hundreds of steps, right, hundreds of steps where you use energy, then this can be dramatically lower. So to put that into perspective, imagine if you would have 5 million units, 5 million pieces of luggage, and you could only deliver 201,000 in the estimated quality, right? Which in this case would be the estimated to be produced, right, in 100% energy efficiency. Now, to make sure, right, achieving 100% energy efficiency is extremely difficult, right? So we're living in very complex times, and this makes it even more important to actually expand our paradigm rather than saying, well, it's too difficult, then we cannot do it, let's keep doing what we have been doing. This is actually a huge opportunity to minimize waste, minimize costs. And because we can see the dramatic inefficiency of energy. So when considering these interactions, it's important to notice, well, why haven't heard about this? Why is that the case? Well, one of the issues is, like I told you, everyone's mostly interested in their own. And this is the way that we have thought that economics and being economically efficient or economic efficient works, but it's not really the case. Because even though none of this data exists, and if any of the listeners actually has a clear overview of all the supply chain steps and all the individual energy efficiency and can derivate the industrial efficiency, I would really welcome that. But I'm pretty sure that no one on earth actually has this data because there is no real incentive for people to gather it. And again, there is no real overview for the entire industry. And this does not eliminate the fact that both the model is completely real and accurate, and that these interactions actually do occur. And thus we have a gigantic energetic inefficiency, which creates a lot of opportunities here again, right? To develop, for example, these new views and methodologies where not everyone is just only interested in self-regulation, but expand towards self-regulation and higher complete, total, or at least a much higher economic efficiency for the industry. Okay. And the third point, well, if we are aware of how dramatically inefficient things are, it will make us more, it will be more easy, right? It will be easier for us to actually understand the problems. That it's, we perceive the world as being efficient where it's actually not, right? We only perceive it as efficient because we only see a very small part of it, but we ignore the other dimensions, which would be things like the economic efficiency and so on. And this is only for this very small point, right? So very small part. This is one of the expected 90 exhibitions or pieces of exhibition of Ocmaya. And thus, there is an opportunity to expand, right? So okay, if we have that, then what should we be looking at? So naturally, there will be opportunities, right, to have more biodegradable materials, shorter supply chains. This is something that people are, or a trend that's occurring anyway, because obviously they are more efficient in general. Not meaning that completely going back to markets like 1850 would be better, right? So this is part of the complexity, and part of why politics must also be included in the exhibition, not only social change. However, it is expected that through an increase of awareness and paradigm where we actually look at the world as it is, more rather as we think it is, will lead to a lot of possible creativity around the world. So this is the end of the video. Check out the other exhibitions as they are being published. And just as a small summary, like I said, this is a sample of how we can move beyond the financial view, so beyond the bottom line, and go into actually looking at economic efficiency, which would include the actual efficient usage of materials, efficient usage of water, efficient production of units, efficient quality, and obviously, hopefully, energy efficiency, which I can hope that you see that by doing this, it could alleviate a whole bunch of different global issues, right? So this is very important. Not focus on only one problem, because it doesn't really solve the problem. You have to focus on the origins of those problems, and in Ocmaya, it's continuously shown that the origins are just misinterpretations of the world that we could actually improve over time.